One of the things I asked the staff at the NEA to ask themselves, I asked myself this question every time I left the NEA building. What did I do today that helped create the vision of the organization of a great public school for every student? I was driven by that vision because I was committed to that vision, because I was involved in creating that vision. And from a public school system, from an affiliate standpoint, if we are not clear on our values, on our vision, and our mission, all the doing are merely random acts. This is the systems thinking approach. It all fits together. Now, how do we do this? You know, this takes time. It's not like just moving the chairs around the deck of a boat. I mean, I've been involved in a lot of strategic planning processes. You know, the typical thing, you get people together, you create some really neat words, you gather everybody together, and you say, from this day forth, this is our new mission. And what happens? Nothing. That mission vision goes up on the shelf of indecision, and everybody continues to do exactly what they've always done. Well, the systems thinking approach is a whole different way of looking at it. Because along the way, I change as a leader. I change as a leader. As we've been looking at this, and we're going to get into this in just a second, the dilemma we have with these models is that the upper model is typically what happens. Everybody's going different directions. Oh, we know something's going on out there, but we're going to do my thing here. The next model is, you will do this. We know where we're going, but you will do this. No commitment, only compliance. The bottom one is where we align the strategy with the direction. And in so doing, people are committed to asking them that question every time they go home from work. What did I do today to commit to that, making that vision a reality? So, it takes time to do this. But time, I believe, and maybe this is as I grow older, I find that time is one of the greatest gifts we can give to each other and to the organization. And if we as leaders can't afford to take the necessary time to impact the transformation of public education and the affiliate, who else can? If not us, who's going to provide the leadership? Now, one of the questions we have to deal with is, what are the critical questions we need to ask each other? And as Einstein said, you know, if I had a problem to solve that my life depended upon it, I'd take the first 55 minutes to find the right question and 5 minutes to solve it. I don't know about you, but in most instances, I've done it the other way around. Right? We try to solve it real quickly, and we don't have the right questions. And one of the things we have found over the last 6 years working together is trying to find that right question. Questions are powerful. And in Robert Greenleaf's book, The Servant Leader, which is a very good monograph to read, he cites the story of John Woolman. John Woolman was a Quaker. He lived in the East, and 100 years before the Civil War actually took place, he took this journey up and down the East Coast. And he was meeting with his fellow Quakers. And as a result of his journey and his asking two critical questions, he basically got the policy of slavery out of the Quaker religion and their communities. Powerful questions can lead to stunning results. What were the two questions that John Woolman asked in his journey? What does owning slaves do to you as a moral person? And what kind of an institutions are you binding over to your children? Those are two powerful questions that change the policy of his community. Now, I often ask myself as I read this story, what happens if there had been 100 John Woolmans taking that same journey up and down the East Coast? 100 years before the Civil War. If they had been successful, would we have not had to go to war, the North and the South, and lose 600,000 of our brothers and sisters in this country? All right, as we look at school changes, what we have found, I mentioned earlier, that they've been random acts. In states, there's not been any really coherent purpose. There's not been an understanding of what the core values are of public education in states. There's no shared ideology among the stakeholders. We basically bring our biases to the table without understanding those mutual biases. And as we've done this, as we begin to look at both the affiliate issues and also the public education issues, we've had a series of models that we've been using to have these conversations. The models are noted in the back of your book, and we're going to get into those, but today I only want to deal with 4 of them. Now, the first one is the core theory of success. Now, it is based upon collaboration, joint decision-making by key folks, developing key action items, and implementing those action items and noting their results. And here's what it looks like. This is what we call a reinforcing loop. This looks pretty simple, but it's actually more complex than it looks like. As you move from the quality, I should also say this. One of my colleagues used to say to me at the NEA, he says, Mel, if you can't count it, doesn't matter. You got to count it. My retort was very simple. I can't get the numbers unless I've got the relationship. I can't build the systems that are going to get me the numbers unless I have the relationships. That same individual, I was having lunch with him a month or so before I left, and I said, well, what have you learned? You've been here for a period of time now. And he said to me, he says, it's all about relationships. So as you begin to look at this issue here, when you move, and there's a detailed explanation in the book, but as you move from quality relationships over to the quality of collective thinking, there's a whole lot that happens in that arrow. We do the assessment, we do the surveys, we do the scanning of what's out there. We create the container for the conversation in this first circle. We build the relationships in that first arrow. Then we come down to the quality of collective thinking and we say, okay, this isn't the exec and the president just getting together talking about what we're going to do in the affiliate or in public education. We obviously have to have the various stakeholders involved in this thing to come to a determination of exactly where we want to go as an organization or as a public education system. Then we begin to make the decisions in the second arrow down here about what that might look like. What might be those programs so that we begin to have the quality actions of those programs. Then we implement it. The third arrow, we begin to implement it as the arrow starts to come up. We play with the programs. We do the programs. Then we do the evaluations of the program in the fourth arrow. And in the fourth arrow, as we do that evaluation, check the matrix, check the numbers, we're building relationships that take us back to the quality of the relationships. This is a fundamental model when you begin to look at systems thinking. Then we need to have, well, how do we have this dialogue, Mel? I mean, we just have it? I mean, are we just going to download information? Are we going to talk about it? Are we going to have a true conversation? Well, how does this sucker work? Well, then you have this model. This is what we call the 4-field square model. This was developed by a guy named Otto Scharmer and Adam Kahane. Now, there's nothing wrong with this model. You have to determine what you want to have happen. There's nothing wrong with debating. We do that very well. There's nothing about downloading. The question is what is your purpose for the conversation to take place? Are we just trying to reenact the existing reality, or are we trying to do something more in the future? But there is a progression as you move from downloading where you have this, there's a fear initially about, I don't know what to say in this room, in this group. There's talking nice I like. The people from Texas taught me this about Texas nice. Right, DC, you know what I'm talking about Texas nice? But not much happens here. I mean, there's a purpose for it because We need to get stuff off our chest, but is that the only thing we want to have? Then we move over to debating. Now, we do this very well. We are all advocates. Boy, we got this sucker nailed. But the question is that do we want to just continue to talk tough? Do we want to just deal with my point of view? Maybe we need to go up to the dialogue section where we're going to say, well, maybe for the first time I may need to change my point of view. I may need to ask more questions before I understand what's going on. I do this all the time, I'm sorry. Oops. And ultimately, we move over to the presencing model, which has no boundaries, which is creative, generative, and it provides a much more open flow to what we want to do. Now, if you have this model in your conversation, and you want to be in the dialogue form, let's say, and somebody then starts to debate, you're creating a vernacular for your container of the group you're dealing with. And you can then say, Claudette, you're debating this issue now. We need to be up here. See how that works? But these are the various 4 phases of what we've been dealing with.